Bonjour tout le monde. All right, so the subject that we're going to be reviewing today is subject pronouns and the verb être. So that was the very first verb that we learned back around the middle of the semester. And so let's start off first with subject pronouns and then we'll move into être at the end. So remember, subject pronouns are referencing I, you, he, she, it, we, you all, they, his, hers, whatever. All right, so in French, we have 9. So it's kind of a bit to deal with. So you guys might be familiar with some of these because we have seen them before. All right, so in French, these are our 9 subject pronouns. So we're talking about the subject of the sentence, the person who is doing the action of the sentence. I walk the dog. I am the subject of that sentence. I'm the one doing the action, walking the dog. If I said, you like fish, you are the one liking the fish, you are the subject of the sentence. Okay, so that is the equivalent in English. All right, so in French, remember, je means I, tu means you, informal. So you might have to go back to the greetings lesson to refresh on what informal and formal means. So for informal, remember, then you're referencing a friend or a family member or someone who's younger than you, or something like that. We don't quite have this concept in English where we use different forms of ways to speak to somebody depending on if they're your professor or your boss or your child or your friend or something like that. But in French we do. So remember, you, informal, you're referencing somebody who's younger than you, your friend, someone you know pretty well. For il, remember, that means he. It can also be it for a masculine object, okay? And going back to, actually, we'll get into this at the end of the lesson. If you guys remember, we did a thing on c'est versus il est or elle est. So remember, we can say, it's an actor, he is smart, or if we're referencing an object, because everything in French has gender, even if we're referencing, the book, and we would say in English, it is whatever, in actuality, because book is a masculine object, we would say he is blue, or he is big, or he is whatever when we're talking about the book. So that's a little bit of a sketchy territory, so we'll get into that a little bit later on. Elle is she, can be it when we're talking about a feminine object. So we've already talked about la table, la bibliothèque, la calculatrice. Those are some feminine objects that we've talked about previously. And so if we were referencing those, describing those objects, it is modern, it is big, whatever, we would say elle est moderne, elle est grande, which you guys don't know the adjective for big yet, but we'll get there. For on, this is how we say we or one. And for we, this is informal. So again, going back to the formal versus informal, remember, informal is dealing with people that you know very well, like your friends, your family members, and such like that. So you will often hear me reference this when we are in class. I can say, on parle français. We speak French. So we, as a class, I am including us in a group, we speak French, but we're using this form instead of the formal form because we're all friends. We're all on an equal playing field in the classroom. Excuse me. When using it in the context of one, it's kind of a general statement like one likes dogs. one speaks English. It's a very generalized statement, and we can use this in that same context. For nous, this is we, and this is strictly in the formal sense. So if you're suggesting to somebody that you don't know very well, we should meet up sometime, then you would probably use the nous form rather than this form, since that is more casual and this is more formal. For vous, this is you or you all. And in the case of you singular, that would be the formal version of you. So we had tu for the informal version of you, and now we have vous for the formal version of you. So you're talking to your professor, you're talking to your boss, someone who's older than you, someone you don't know very well, you're going to use the vous form. And the French are very, they want you to have respect and manners at all times, even if you're just learning the language and stuff. So always use vous with a French person that you don't know very well. Vous can also be a group when you're talking about more than one person. So this one would always be singular, but this one could be plural as well, talking about a large group of people. I might say, you all are going to give a presentation. And so I would reference the entire class by using vous. But that doesn't include myself. It's just saying you all are going to do this thing. For il, and again, this just has an added S to it. And remember, that is how we make things plural, is by adding an S. The pronunciation, however, is the same between these two. This one is il, this one is il. And I will sometimes say il singulier, singular, il pluriel, plural. And those words are very similar to English, so you guys should be able to understand what they mean. So for il pluriel, it is he or them, masculine. So you're talking about a group of guys and you say they play sports. So you're referencing that group over there. It doesn't include you. It doesn't include anybody that's in this current group that you're part of. You're referencing some other group over there. So you're going to say they like sports. And that's for masculine. And then for feminine, elle, pluriel, again, both of these pronunciation is the same. Spelling is the only thing that's different. And again, I will reference singulier, pluriel, pluriel for each one that I'm talking about. And again, this one is, I guess instead of them, I'll say they. That should be a little bit better to understand. And of course, since this is she, this is they, feminine. So this is only if we're talking about a group of girls, a singular group of girls. So like in French, because we have everything having two different genders, if we have a mixed group of people, there's some boys and there's some girls in the classroom or something, and we say they watch Netflix, then actually we're going to use the il plural form because it's a mixed group of people. But in French, the masculine always wins out. So even if there's a group of 100 girls and there's one guy amongst the group of 100 girls, we're still going to use the masculine form, despite the fact that there are girls involved. So it's a little hard to wrap your head around. But this is only if we're talking about specifically a group of girls. If there's even a single guy mixed in, then we're going to use the il plural form. And I hope that makes a little bit of sense as we go along and we do more exercises and, we conjugate more verbs. You guys will start to get a feel for this sort of thing. And again, because in French, everything has a gender, even inanimate objects like tables and books and chairs and things like that. If we're even referencing If we're referencing a group of masculine objects, then we use this form. If we're referencing a group of feminine objects, then we use this form. And if we're referencing a group of mixed gendered objects like a table, a book, and a calculator, out of those three, the table and the calculator are feminine objects, and the book is the one masculine object. But because we have a masculine object in there, we need to use the masculine form to talk about all of these objects. If all of these objects are blue, we're using the masculine form to describe all of these objects. All right, so that's the first part. It's good to have a good understanding first of subject pronouns before you start conjugating verbs. And some people might not understand what conjugating means, and I'm not sure that we explicitly went over it before when we did this lesson. So I also want to talk about that a little bit. In English, we also have this idea of conjugating verbs, but not quite in the same way as in French. So in English, we will say, I am, you are, he is, she is, they are, we are, you are, whatever. So by changing the verb to be would be the infinitive of the verb. And the infinitive is the unconjugated form. It's in its base form, its most basic form, and the infinitive usually means to whatever. To be, to eat, to sleep, to dream. Those are the infinitive forms because they have that base meaning. They're not changed or altered at all. But when we say I am, then we're changing this base form, and that's called conjugating. So putting it in a specific tense, whether it's present tense, past tense, future tense, conditional tense. There's many different tenses in French, and by the time that you're done with your French career, you'll know lots of things about French tenses and how to conjugate appropriately depending on the tense. For the time being, we're strictly in the present tense. So we're just saying, I am, you are, he is, she is, and we're not saying anything else or anything further. So think of yourself as like a little French kindergartner, and you don't have very much understanding of the language. And let's see, hold on. All right, I am back. So yes, think about yourself as like a little French kindergartner. Think about how kindergartners speak. They say, I like dogs, I like books, I like tables, whatever. And it's very basic, very simple speech, and that's what we're being able to do here in French based off the vocabulary that we're learning and stuff like that. So first, we're gonna start with the verb to be in French, which of course, you guys should know, is être. And the thing about être that makes it so complicated is, unlike many other verbs in French, it does not follow any pattern or anything like that. It's very irregular. So that makes it the hardest to learn, but it's one of the most important things to learn because we say, I am smart, I am a student, he is an actor, he is big, he is tall. And this is one of the most basic constructions and the easiest constructions to be able to say the most once we learn the appropriate vocabulary. So when it comes to conjugating verbs, I always recommend making flashcards, writing down the verb many times, practicing your conjugations many times, because that'll help you memorize it. So just, taking a picture of it or something like that isn't going to help you. It helps you to practice and practice and practice. And in French and many other foreign languages, it takes 80 repetitions of something before you actually have it down or before your brain creates those pathways to help you memorize it. So it is very important that you have a lot of repetition and a lot of practice with this verb before you can expect to master it. All right, so the verb être, again, like I said, very irregular. Je suis, tu es, il, elle, on est. All right, so I just did this one side of the chart. You'll usually see it in a chart of 6 with the other half, nous, vous, il, elle, on the other side. But first, I want to talk about this just real quick. So we just went over subject pronouns, so you guys should be familiar with what each of these subject pronouns mean. And for this one that we have il, elle, on, all of these use the same form of être. He is, she is, we are, or one is, depending on what the context is that you're using on in. All right, so I'm not a big fan of translation. I try to stay away from that as much as possible. And in a perfect world without COVID, we would be speaking French more in the classroom. But for this specific purpose, so that you can kind of get the understanding of what conjugating is and what these different forms mean in French, I'm going to translate these ones for you. All right. So, je suis, I am. Tu es, you are. Il est, he is. Elle est, she is. And on est, we are, or one is in general when talking about somebody. Okay? So those are the translations of what each of these little phrases mean. Okay? So if I say, je suis intelligent, I am intelligent. Je suis un professeur, I am a professor. Je suis je suis timide. That was an adjective that we've learned previously. I am shy. Je suis américaine. I am American. So again, by just learning this one verb, there's many, many things that we can already talk about and we can already say in French, which is pretty cool. But again, there is no pattern here. There is no easy way to memorize this. It's just something that you have to practice with and keep working with to get it more and more every day. Now, for these two, you might be able to hear it. Tu es, il est. Tu es, elle est. Tu es, on est. Okay, so even though they're spelled a little bit differently, they are pronounced the same. So that is something for pronunciation. Again, learning these patterns and stuff will get you more comfortable with speaking and make you feel more confident in class. All right, now let's go to the second half of the chart, just real quick. All right, we have nous sommes, vous êtes, ils sont, elles sont. All right, so again, just like with il, elle, on, the singular forms, with the plural forms, both of these use this same form. Ils sont, elles sont. All right, and you might have also heard here a little thing that we talked about previously. We have this word followed by a word that starts with a vowel. So we do pronounce that S. Here you hear nous sommes. We don't say nous sommes because we don't pronounce final consonants on the end of our words. But in this case, because this one does start with vowel, vous êtes. And again, that becomes a Z sound for pronunciation. All right, and each of these, we're still with the verb to be. This is the only verb that we're working with today. And so we have we are, you are, or y'all are, depending on if you're talking about a singular formal situation, like with your professor, or if you're talking about a plural situation, like you're talking to a group of people. And this is they are, could be talking about masculine or feminine groups of people. And again, remember, for il plural, if we're talking about a group of 20 girls and we've got one guy in the mix, we're still going to use the il form. Despite the fact that there's girls in the group, the only time that we use the elle form is if we're talking about only feminine objects or people. If there's no masculine people in the group, then we'll use the elle form. But if there's even one masculine thing in the group, we're going to use the il form to talk about them, they over there. All right. Now, we have our definitions, our translations of these things. So if I wanted to say, nous sommes intelligents, we are intelligent, okay? So make sure that you understand when it's put in a sentence context, how it translates, what it actually means in French, and make sure you know each of these forms because you'll have to conjugate the verb and continue to conjugate the verb either in the blank or write your own sentences. And être is such a prevalent verb. It is everywhere in French. You're going to keep using it and it's going to keep popping up. So you need to make sure that you have a good understanding of these basic foundations before we move on to anything else. All right. The other important thing to talk about when it comes to the verb être is, as I mentioned previously, we have this thing in English where we have completely different words for it when we say it is or they are or something like that when we're talking about objects that in English it's gender neutral. We don't say, the table is a girl or the book is a boy or anything like that. When it's an object, we don't reference a specific gender. But in French, we do. And so we have this thing where we say, it is a computer versus it is modern. And in English, those sound the same. We say it is. But in French, we have this phenomenon of using c'est versus il est or elle est, depending on whether it's masculine or feminine. So remember with say, we use that with nouns. Actually, and il est, elle est used with adjectives, professions, and relationships. Okay, so that's very technical speech here that we're talking about. So remember, nouns are people, places, or things. It is a chair. It is a table. It is a book. It is a computer. It is a student. It is a teacher. It is a shark. Whatever the object is, that's a noun, a person, place, or thing, okay? Adjectives are describing words. And again, you guys might find this very basic, but we have to go into English a little bit before we can move forward with our French knowledge. So adjectives are describing words. It is beautiful. It is smart. It is fun. It is shy. It is enjoyable. It is pretty. It is tall. It is green. It is red. It is blue. Okay, so those are all adjectives. Professions, of course, any job, like he is a doctor, he is a teacher, he is a scientist, he is an engineer. Any of those, we're going to use il est or elle est. And relationships. They are friends. They are family. They are a couple. They are married. Whatever it is, we're going to use il est or elle est. Now, let me give you some examples so you can kind of put this into some more, I guess, knowledge, application of the knowledge. Okay, so when we say c'est, we're going to say c'est une table. All right, it's a table. So we're referencing specifically an object, so it's a noun, it's a person, place, or thing, that table, all right? And we have our article here. In French, most of the time, you need an article. You need to have the article in your sentence. Sometimes in English, we would say like, French is hard. But in English, you would say, or in French, you would say, the English is hard, or something like that. So you always have an article in your sentence. C'est un acteur. All right, so if I was talking about Will Smith or Chris Hemsworth or Jack Black or I don't know, any actors, if I was referencing an actor, I would say, c'est un acteur. Again, we have our article in the sentence. So we know that that is a noun and we've got to go with c'est for that. All right, but if we're talking about the table and we want to say the table's blue, hold on. All right, so you see that I used elle here with this adjective. So, c'est une table, elle est bleue. So since we're talking about an adjective, a descriptive word, we've got to change to elle, even though we're still talking about the same table we were talking about over here. And both of these is translated as it is in English. But we have to choose between these different forms in French because it's the way that they do things grammatically. So if I say c'est un acteur, it is an actor. Il est beau. You guys may or may not be familiar with the word beau. Beau is handsome or good looking. And of course there is a different form for feminine. But in this case, we're talking about un acteur, so we know it's masculine. So we're going to use il est since it's masculine. And then we got to make sure that the adjective that goes with it is masculine. So, il est beau, he is handsome. It's an actor, he is handsome. Also, with nouns, you guys may or may not be aware of this, but we also have proper nouns, okay, which are the names of objects, such as a company, like Amazon, or a name like John or Sally. So if you want to reference a specific noun, here we're referencing, the object, which is a noun as well. But if we're referencing a specific company, a specific person that has a name, then we can even use their name. We can say, c'est John, c'est Amazon, c'est Sally, c'est Rose, c'est Martha, I don't know, whatever the person's name is, okay? So when describing someone, you can also just use their name to describe them instead of a regular noun. All right, so recap. C'est is used with nouns. You must have an article. Adjectives, professions, and relationships go with il est or elle est, depending on the gender of the object or the person that is being described. Excuse me. Also, when saying c'est un acteur, if you want to say he is an actor, il est acteur. So this is just a slight change from that in meaning. So we're talking about his profession here. We're talking about the noun that the person is. So this is his profession. He is an actor. It is an actor. In this case, you can see there is no article here. So in French, I said always have an article in your sentence. This is the only case in which you will not have an article in your sentence when using il est, elle est. The other thing to be aware of also is this is the singular form. We're talking about one object or one person. When we're talking about multiple objects, it becomes ce sont, ils sont, elles sont. All right, you may or may not be able to see that very well up there. So do make sure that you're aware of the singular or the plural form of it, whether we're talking about a single object or we're talking about multiple objects. All right, so again, as always, if you guys have any questions, please let me know. Feel free to email me. I am always available for email, and I am available by appointment for any tutoring or questions that you guys have. Au revoir.